So we discussed yesterday that there are some fundamental principles which are obeyed by everything. I mean, the universe is governed by a few fundamental principles, and one such principle in structural mechanics is called the principle of minimum potential energy, that corresponds to, that governs the stable equilibrium configuration. So the deformation, every under any applied loading, the deformation will tend to occupy that shape which will minimize the total potential of the system. And, so that actually governs the basic concept of structural analysis, static problems, and that is why all methods of analysis that you, no matter what the origin may be, you start from differential equation, Macaulay's equation, or you use a three-moment equation, slope deflection, moment distribution, energy theorems, Kani's method, whatever, matrix formulation. You will see that matrix formulation is essentially related to what we are discussing. I mean, it is derived directly from that. So they all lead to the same solution. So it is like ultimate truth is same. There are different roads, different paths leading to that truth. So it is something like that. So ultimate truth being the deformation, a structure will deform in the shape which will render the total potential of the system to be a minimum. And there are similar kind of extremal principles in different fields of science and engineering, and it becomes easier. I mean, many a times the problem becomes easier to solve while approached from the point from these extremal principles. If you know what the extremal principle is corresponding to that particular problem, then it is often easier to formulate the problem in terms of that, instead of going by the differential equation route. And wherever those principles exist, the governing differential equation can be derived from those principles. We will see that how. But having said that, it is also true that for some problems, for some fields, we do not yet know what the governing extremal principles are. Although we know the differential equation that governs the phenomena, because no matter what you do, every problem can be defined in terms of a differential equation. The phenomena can be, you can develop a differential equation to describe a particular phenomena. But variational principles, this extremal principle, may not be known for some problems, for all problems. So wherever those are known, we are fortunate. For structural mechanics, we know what the governing principles are, and it often boils down to a same set of equations that we form, or that we get by using the method of weighted residuals. So let us start with a little discussion. What is this? What do we mean by these variational principles? So variational principle specifies a scalar quantity. You can so that scalar quantity is referred to as a functional, and that's how the name functional analysis comes into being. So functional, you can loosely refer to it as a function of functions. It depends on several functions. At least one function, there can be several functions. So that is what you see here, I as a function of u of x as a representative function. And it is defined by, now how do you construct this scalar? I mean, how do you convert this function into a single number? So that is for any function there is only one way to convert it into a single number, and that is to integrate it. Integrate it over some limits, definite integral, and then the result is going to be a number. So that is what the functional is defined. So it is defined by this integral form. I of u is given as integral of some function of u and its derivatives in the domain. So into domain integral involving f1 of u prime, u double prime, and so on. So the function and its derivatives. So f1 is a differential operator, and this integral is evaluated over the domain. So now there can be several terms. I mean, this is a generic differential operator. You can have several terms comprising, I mean, this can be sum of several different terms, this domain integral. Similarly, there will be a boundary integral. So some domain integral and boundary integral, and there is another differential operator which operates on the function u and its spatial derivatives. And once you evaluate, at least you can appreciate that these are all definite integrals. So after you evaluate the definite integrals, all that you are left with is a number. And that number is what we call as the functional here. So that is a scalar number. Now, several problems in engineering, as I discussed in structural mechanics, it is defined as the potential energy. So, several problems in engineering are characterized by such variational principles where the solution, the correct solution, is characterized by some extreme value of this scalar. So in some cases we may be looking at the maxima of I, the solution will correspond to that configuration which will maximize I, or in some other formulation we will find that solution corresponds to that configuration which will minimize I over all possible variations on U. So U can be anything, U can be varied, so that that is what we refer to as varied path. So which satisfies the essential boundary conditions, geometric boundary conditions of the problem. So all those varied paths, admissible trial functions or admissible functions, they can all be considered, and whichever of all those, I mean there are infinite such possibilities, and whichever renders this particular functional an extremal, whatever that correct extremal configuration be, minima or maxima, that depends on the formulation. So that will be the true solution. So true solution U. So the desired solution is the function ux, u of x, which makes the functional stationary. Stationary, I mean, if you look at it, when the function, when something becomes minima or maxima, the rate of change becomes smaller and smaller, and at that particular, exactly at that particular point where it is minima or maxima, it is defined by rate of change with respect to function is 0. It vanishes. That functional does not change with the slight variation around that configuration. So that is called stationarity condition. So the functional becomes stationary with respect to small changes, delta u, that is all known as varied path. So if I disturb it slightly, and that is what we refer to in the potential well, if from the stable configuration, if I disturb slightly from the stable configuration, that minimum value does not change, it will come back to its original configuration, or the minimum position. So that is essentially the idea, and therefore we define the solution, or we characterize the solution by stating that we consider a variation of the functional. So delta is a variational operator. So we try to find that configuration of u, true path u, with respect to which, if we perturb it slightly, so this perturbation is this variation, then the variation of this functional as a function of u is 0. So there is no variation in the functional value. So delta represents the variation operator, and it represents the change in value of the functional I of u due to small admissible change in function u. So admissible change. So whatever variation we are looking at, they all satisfy the boundary conditions. None of the boundary conditions, essential boundary conditions, are violated. So for that, those essential admissible changes, the value, this functional, does not significantly deviate, or it is almost the variation rate of change is 0, and that will correspond to the true solution or true path. So conceptually, this variation is what we are talking here, that variation or first variation of the functional should vanish. It is essentially same as what you refer to as a minima of the function or maxima of the function. First derivative of the function with respect to the unknown should vanish. So a function f of x is independent variable. So condition of maxima or minima or extremal value of function f of x is given by rate of change. When the rate of change of function f with respect to x vanishes. So that value of x is obtained by del f over del x is equal to 0. So you enforce the condition that the function rate of change of function with respect to x vanishes, and that is the condition of stationarity or the extreme position. It can be maxima or minima. Whether it is maxima or minima, that will be found by taking the second derivative. So first derivative being 0 is the necessary condition, and that is what we do, and that is what we have here in the case of variational formulation. The first variation of the functional with respect to the unknown function that we are trying to seek vanishes, and that is the condition, that is where the functional will attain stationarity. Yes, Charu.
Sir, how do we define the range in between those functions will be constant? Like it varies, depends upon the range on both the sides.
I didn't get you. What do you mean by range?
Sir, range at which this rate of change of that function will be constant or will be negligible.
Oh, we don't specify that. We don't say that what is the range. We just, it's just an operation, mathematical operation, and I am only trying to explain what it means. So variation, small deformation framework exists, and variation is just a slight perturbation. So maybe what you refer to as x and x plus delta x. So it is similar to that u and u plus or minus delta u.
Yes,
Right?
sir. So I'm asking what should be that slight perturbation that we have to.
Yes, that is what I am saying. I mean, it is only a conceptual notion. We don't actually get into computation of this small perturbation. Right? We don't ever we will not have any need for defining what is this small variation delta u. Right? But suffice it to say that it is a conceptual incremental change which uh, is admissible change in u. So when I say admissible change, it means that the boundary conditions are not violated. So after that, any change is fine. So everything, that is what I said, there are infinite possibilities. So u true solution is of course only one. I can change it in any number of ways. There are infinite ways to tweak it. But as long as the boundary conditions, the essential boundary conditions are not violated, all of them are admissible. We are not eliminating any of the possibilities. So when I say variation, it can be very large variation also numerically if you see that. But the importance of that small admissible change is to make it consistent with the assumption, our assumption that frame of reference is not changing. So the emphasis on that small admissible change is to only ensure that we are allowed to use the same frame of reference for defining the problem in with respect to u as well as with respect to u plus delta u. Right? Otherwise, there is no such issue regarding the quantification of what is delta u going to be. That's a universal principle. We are looking at all possible configurations which will render the functional to a extremal position. It will. We are looking at stationarity of the functional, which may lead to either maxima or minima.
And sir, apart from essential boundary condition, do we still have to consider the natural boundary condition, because there may be the secondary variable also?
We don't bother about natural boundary condition. You will see why. Because that natural boundary condition will be naturally satisfied during the process of approximation. Approximately satisfied. So there is a reason why these variables are called primary variables and secondary variables. Primary variables are of prime importance. There is a strong weight to be given to primary variables for constructing approximation for, and it may come up. I mean, this is a very common problem in finite element modeling. Let's say you have a plate kind of a thing, or a rectangular kind of object, where, and you are looking at the corner point of this joint, I mean one edge and two perpendicular edges, and you have primary boundary condition, essential boundary condition specified on this edge and the natural boundary condition specified on this edge. So what boundary condition do you apply for this common point which is shared by both the edges? You cannot obviously specify both primary as well as secondary boundary condition on this node which is common, which is shared by the two edges. So whenever you come across this kind of problem which takes precedence, then it is always the primary variable which takes precedence. It has a more force in governing the approximation. So if you ever have a situation, come across a situation where one point can possibly have two different boundary conditions specified, either primary essential boundary condition or natural boundary condition, then it is the essential boundary condition which takes precedence. The natural boundary condition will be approximately satisfied as a process of solution. And the approximation will keep on improving as you keep on improving, refining the solution.
Okay, sir.
Right?
And sir,
So,
one more thing that
yes,
I I read somewhere that if a natural boundary condition is defined, then it is quite understood that there must be at least one boundary, essential boundary condition.
no, 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 no. Okay. What you are saying is if there is natural boundary conditions prescribed, then there must be at least one essential boundary condition. Is that what you are saying?
Yes, sir. Sir, I read it somewhere.
Okay. What I mean, I would recommend you to please go back and read it very carefully. I don't think this kind of statement makes sense. What it might have said that wherever you have a natural boundary condition term appearing, there would be a corresponding term corresponding to primary variable or essential boundary condition that is specified on primary variable. And that is what you identify in the boundary term of uh, weak form of weighted residual statement. The boundary term always appears as a product of two terms. One is primary variable, one is secondary variable. One gives you primary variable, and I will show that weighting function, it does not from weak form of weighted residual statement, it does not appeal much why it should be related to primary variable. But as we go from this variational principal approach, you will appreciate why it should be related to the primary variable of the problem, and unknown should be substituted for weighting function. But the multiplier of the weighting function term is what is secondary variable, right? So the boundary term will always appear as a product of two quantities. One of them refers to primary variable, one of them refers to secondary variable. And you can specify either of them. Either you specify primary variable or you specify secondary variable. Very rarely you will require to specify both of them, that is called mixed boundary condition cases, and those situations we do not encounter in structural mechanics problems usually, right? But I would not say that it is completely either or situation. There are some problems where you may need to specify both the values to some extent. But and therefore it is not correct to say that wherever you have a natural boundary condition prescribed, you also have to have a essential boundary condition prescribed. That's not true. For example, I will tell you, this is a very common problem that is that often stumps civil engineers in answering. Have you ever thought the possibility of a beam without any supports? Either
No,
Bernoulli
sir.
beam without any support,
No, sir.
and it still carries weight?
No, sir.
Now, let me ask you another rhetorical question. Have you ever traveled in an aircraft? Or at least
Not.
you have seen the aircraft
Yes.
flying?
Yes.
What is the structural model for aircraft? I mean, that aircraft is carrying load, isn't it? It is supporting load, payload.
Yes, sir.
What are the boundary conditions of that aircraft?
Sir, it works on the principle of aerodynamics and
Yes, but
like
then
that.
how do you support? I mean, is there any reaction? How does the aircraft support the load?
Yes, sir. Sir, left action of the wind acts over it.
So that is all distributed. So it is all load, isn't it? So there is no support point as such. lift, etc. These are all aerodynamic forces. So the body is, the aircraft is all forces, everywhere there are forces acting, but there is no support point. Where are those external forces being uh, supported? Do you ever, cantilever, you have civil engineering structure building, those are the load on beam, load on slab is transferred to beams, beams will transfer the reaction to columns, and then column will transfer reaction to foundation, and foundation will transfer that load to ground, and at its level where there is sufficient bearing capacity. Right? So it's always action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction. So where is the reaction for this aircraft? There is no support whatsoever.
Sir, thrust.
So again, thrust is again a force, isn't it? All that is being generated. These are all forces that are being generated and they are acting. It is just that some forces, for example, if the aircraft is flying, payload is gravitational, it's vertically downward. In order to counter that, you generate additional forces, lift forces, and that is why it is important to maintain that velocity, cruise velocity, that will generate adequate thrust, adequate lift, aerodynamic lift, which will counterbalance the weight that is dead weight and the payload that is acting downward. And that is how the aircraft remains in air. And as soon as its speed decreases, it needs landing gear, it needs supports. It needs those wheels to be supported on the entire dead weight when it is stationary.
So can't we say that at a particular instant of time that thrust is working as virtual support for the...
That is what happens. But there is no fixed support which will provide the reaction. There is no reaction whatsoever. If you look at if the simplest possible model for aircraft is a beam with both ends free. There is a vertically downward force acting, and these vertically downward forces are balanced by upward forces of the lift. But there is no support at the ends or at middle, whatever. So it's a self, the dead load is being balanced by the aerodynamic lift that is generated by virtue of its forward movement, the velocity of the aircraft. So bluff body, flow past bluff body is not always a bad thing. It does give you stabilizing forces for systems like aircrafts. So for aircraft, there are no essential boundary conditions. It's all a natural boundary condition on both sides. So bending moment and shear force should vanish at both ends. So these are all natural boundary conditions. There is no essential boundary condition in aircraft structure. Right? So I hope I have succeeded in confusing you more than what you were. What happened? You can't even take a joke or what?
No, sir. Now I'm thinking in a different perspective.
Okay, fine, good. So let us continue. So the whole idea is approximate solution. Is we are looking at approximate solution and okay, sorry, I lost track. So the varied path will try to find, or when we say first variation of the functional as a function of some function u vanishes. So what we are trying to emphasize here, that in the neighborhood of u, if we introduce slight perturbation, then the functional value of the functional does not change. So rate of change of functional with respect to this function is 0, and that is the condition of stationarity, and that is what we seek as a solution condition, because the true solution has to satisfy this stationarity condition. That is the essential condition, the stationarity. And that is what if we go back to our bar problem, so that is for axial deformation problem, the total potential of the system is given. If U is the deformation, then there is axial deformation, axial strain energy is stored due to axial deformation, so that is half AE du by dx whole square. So that is essentially stress multiplied by strain integrated over volume, this expression. Half of stress multiplied by strain integrated over volume, so that is the strain energy of deformation that is stored. And this is the energy stored, and the work done by the external forces will be subtracted, because that will be reducing the potential of the external forces. So if there is a load acting here and vertically downward, and if the positive direction of deformation is assumed to be vertically downward, and this load moves through displacement u, then the potential of this load has decreased. It is same thing like what is the potential energy of water that is stored at an elevated water tank. When it flows down, its potential has decreased. Right? So vertically downward force, the weight of the water is acting through the displacement, the differential of the height of elevation, and that is the potential energy that has been lost. So the potential of that body of water has been decreased by this amount, and that decrease is transformed into kinetic energy. That's how the water flows and gains the velocity to move in pipelines. So that work done by the external forces is going to be Q, that's distributed through the length, the distributed traction. So QU integrated over the entire length, so that will be 1. And then there is point load at end point, x is equal to L. So this is Dirac delta function, which denotes the location. The point load Q is applied at x is equal to L. So the work done by these external forces in moving through the displacement U, and then integrated over the length. So this is the total potential energy. So now you see that this particular expression, this is what the boundary condition is, and you will notice that this will correspond to this will pop out as the boundary condition that needs to be specified in the problem. If I simplify this, if I impose now this statement, condition that the first variation of this functional should vanish with respect to variation on u, then it leads to the governing differential equation that we are seeking. So desired solution to the deformation problem is the extremal function u of x, which renders the functional I of u a minimum. So minimum because we are looking at minimum potential energy configuration corresponding to stable equilibrium. So this essentially is the essential requirement. This is not the sufficient requirement, but this essential requirement will do the job for us. So first variation of I with respect to u should vanish, and that is what we impose this variational operator, and this is set to 0. Now variational operator for all practical purposes operates exactly like a differential operator, and it commutes with the differential operator. So delta operating on du by dx is same as d over dx operating on delta u, right? So it will commute. The differential and variational operators, they commute. So the order of application does not matter. So a little bit of mathematical jugglery. So I take this differential operator. So as I said, variational operator, as I said, it acts exactly like differential operator. So it is like operates on this. So it becomes delta. A and E are of course constant, and this is will be 2 times delta of du by dx. So and then this will again become the derivative here. So AE, so half 2 will come here and it will get cancelled by this factor 2, and this is what it reduces to. And then this derivative differential or variational operator, there is nothing here to vary. Q is known function, there is nothing to vary here. This Q is a known quantity, nothing to vary here. So the only thing that can vary here is U. So the variational operator operates on delta U. Right? So this is what, and then delta U, delta commutes with du with the differential operator, and eventually now it is a function product of two functions, so it can be evaluated, integrated by parts, and this is what we have. If we integrate by parts, so we will have one boundary term and then again another domain term, and similar this term appears as it is. So if I simplify that, collect all the terms, so delta u, this integral, I collect this term, and this is what it gives you. Q comes here 0 to L, so this term and this term, it gets combined in this equation, this term, and x, this delta x minus L, that will reduce it to this boundary condition term, x is equal to L. This is to be evaluated at x is equal to L, and so one term coming from here and one term coming from here at x is equal to L, and this is the term corresponding to x is equal to 0. So two boundary terms and one domain integral term. And if you look at all of these terms, I mean, these have to vanish independent. These three terms, combination of these three terms has to be 0. Now this has to be 0 for any arbitrary variation of delta u. We have not defined that delta u has to vary like this, then this has to satisfy. So the variation, as long as the only restriction is variation has to be small, such that the frame of reference remains valid, but apart from that there is no specification on the variation on u. So it can be anything. So if this expression has to vanish for any arbitrary variation of delta u, the only way it can hold is when each of these terms individually vanish, and that is what gives us the governing differential equation of the problem. For any arbitrary admissible variation delta u, each term of the summation should vanish independently. So delta u times this integral, this should vanish, and with this boundary condition, AE times du by dx multiplied by delta u at x is equal to 0 should be 0, and AE times du by dx minus q multiplied by delta u at x is equal to, it should be L actually, not 1. So that should also be 0. So these provide the these provide the basic governing differential equation. So this can be 0, this integral can be 0 for any arbitrary delta u only when this integrand itself is 0, uniformly 0, and when that is forced set to 0, that gives you the governing differential equation of the problem, and this is what you have as the boundary conditions of the problem. Now if you look at it, boundary condition, and compare it with the boundary term of the weak form, delta u, what you see here is delta u in the weak form, that is what is replaced by the weighting function, isn't it? So weighting function here, weighting function here. So what you see in as a weighting function term in the weak form of weighted residual statement is actually the variation on the unknown function. So what is the admissible variation on the unknown function? So if the boundary condition at the boundary is specified in terms of u, so obviously the variation is 0. You cannot vary a constant. So if the boundary condition is specified on u at x is equal to 0, then the variation of boundary condition value is 0, and that is what is being referred to as the essential boundary condition. And therefore you may now see the equivalence between the weighting function and the variation of the unknown function. So it is the virtual displacement. So weighting function is essentially the virtual displacement that we look at, that we introduce in order to find the minimum potential energy configuration. And therefore it is the weighting function when it is substituted by the displacement, that is because if the and that is the primary variable, because when the boundary condition is specified on primary variable, its variation at that point is going to be 0. And therefore whenever you say that this product is 0, so either this term vanishes or this term vanishes. So what does this mean? So variation of u vanishes at x is equal to 0. So variation of u vanishes at x is equal to 0 implies that u is known at x is equal to 0, or the boundary condition is specified in terms of u. So there is no scope of varying u at this point. And similarly, if this is equal to 0 at x is equal to L, then AE times A du by dx is equal to Q at x is equal to L. Right? So either that or displacement, or again the delta u should be 0. So if it is free end, then obviously u is free to vary, so delta u cannot be equal to 0. So this term has to vanish, and that is what gives you the natural boundary condition of the problem. So now we can construct the approximate solution. Approximate solution can be constructed as a linear combination of admissible function or trial functions which satisfy the essential boundary conditions of the problem, and that is given by, in this case there is a homogeneous boundary condition, u is equal to 0 at x is equal to 0, so we just the non-homogeneous form vanishes, so we just have this approximate solution as Cj Gj of x. And when we choose this form, then what is the variation on what is the scope of variation? How does this approximation change? Gj now is a known function. The only variation possible in this approximation is through these coefficients Cj. If I change the coefficients, then the function value changes. So this variation of functional now reduces to rate of change or change in functional with respect to these unknown coefficients of the problem. So once I choose this approximation in terms of linear combination of the basis functions with unknown coefficient, then this variation of the functional is synonymous with the partial derivative or rate of change of functional with respect to the coefficients, unknown coefficients of the approximation. And when I use this, construct this variational statement, functional, and then take its set, the basic notion. Now it is like a function IU I of u hat is a function of these unknown coefficients C1, C2, C3, etc. So the condition of stationarity or condition of minima will be just 0 is equal to rate of change of I with respect to uh, these unknown coefficients Cj. And once we do that, we will end up with the same set of equations that we had derived using Galerkin's method of weak formulation of weighted residual statement. And that's, if you do this exercise, it will be quite revealing that what I started this lecture with. Ultimate truth is one. There are different paths leading to the ultimate truth. So I'll stop here. Any questions?
So this Cj will be the complete family of equations now.
Oh, Cj is not the complete family. Gj. Gj are the basis functions. Cj are the coefficients, unknown coefficients.
So, sir, these coefficients will carry the constant value or the variable?
They will be evaluated to be constants.
Okay.
Right? Gj are functions, so it can be for this problem, it can be x, x square, x cube, etc. So essentially, u hat is written as c1 x plus c2 x square plus c3 x cube, so on. So now once we substitute this approximation of u hat in the functional now becomes a function of, it's all a definite integral. So you can evaluate the integral and you end up with a statement that that is a function of c1, c2 and c3. So now you are trying to minimize that functional I as a function of c1, c2, c3. So the only way you can find the conditions for minimum of I is by enforcing that rate of change of I with respect to c1 vanishes, rate of change of I with respect to c2 vanishes, rate of change of I with respect to c3 vanishes, because it's only the value of c1, c2 and c3 that will change the approximation. X, x square and x cube, they are not changing.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so any other question?
Sir, in the above expression, you have written that minimum potential energy is equal to what it is?
Minimum
strain energy stored in the body minus work done.
That is the total potential energy, and this total potential has to be minimized for a stable deformed configuration.
Sir, we have written we have learned that the energy stored in our body.
Yes.
Work done. So it must be zero. The minimum potential energy must be zero according to this.
Not really. Why should it be zero?
Sir, because we have written that force acting on a body, the strain energy is stored in a body by external force. The work done is equal to
equilibrium condition, of course, refers to that there should not be any net force acting on the body. Right? Sum of all forces, internal and external forces, they should vanish. That is true. Right? But the potential energy, that can be that only has to be minimum. It is not necessarily that the work done by the external body should cancel with the strain energy stored in the body.
Okay.
Because there are various energy terms we will see gradually. this what we have derived here, the differential equation of the problem for static, and there we only use the uh, potential energy terms, I mean strain energy term, and the work done by the external forces. If we include the time dependent portion, then we will have to incorporate the kinetic energy as well as the loss mechanism, whatever the loss, if there is any non-conservative force that is acting, and work done by these non-conservative forces. So external forces are also included in the non-conservative forces. Right? So non-conservative forces refer to those forces which cannot be derived through a potential function. So we will discuss those concepts a little more detail, in little more detail when we come to that, come to dynamics part, and that is called Hamilton's principle, which is a more general form of what we commonly refer to as minimum potential energy configuration, I mean the principle for deriving static deformed configuration. So when the time dependent forces are acting, the deformation is time dependent, then the corresponding variational principle is called Hamilton's principle. So maybe you will learn about Hamilton's principle in vibration course, or remind me when we deal with the time dependent problems in this course. Then we will discuss that Hamilton's principle there.
Will there any example to get more understandable?
Pardon?
So we have, sir, will there be any example so we'll get an idea about it, to get more clear picture?
हाँ भाई, ये आप ये ट्रस्ट प्रॉब्लम ही सॉल्व करो ना, बार प्रॉब्लम.
Yes, sir.
I mean this I intentionally use this axially loaded bar problem. I solved it. You will find the solution using method of weighted residual. Now you can you have the entire formulation for variational principles. So try to solve it using variational principles, and you will find that you will get exactly same set of equations and exactly same solution. Right? I mean there is nothing better than working out yourself and seeing it, how it works. Right? I mean, no amount of lectures is going to help your understanding if you do not work out yourself. Right?
Okay, sir.
So I'll be issuing another, I mean the first set of home assignment problems. So maybe you can work on that, and that should help in crystallizing the concepts that we have been discussing so far.